So this is going to be the presentation for married borrowers, and we're specifically focusing on mostly students that are graduating or how it works when you go into student loan repayment. Can you guys in the chat just let me know what year you guys are in, if you're a first, second, third, or fourth year student? I just kind of want to see what we have. I know that there's 22 students. Also, there's like a little bit, there's first, second, there's first, fourth, second, first, two. Okay, so we kind of have like a mix. That's good. And then some PhD students. Okay, that's good. This is still going to be good information regardless, because the reason why we decided to do it at this time is because we wanted to make sure that you guys know how to, you know, what you need to look into. Say you're going to be graduating soon, because we know that tax filing season is about to start. So we want to make sure that if you guys have any questions or anything, that you guys get the information before you start filing your taxes and all of that. Of course, we can't give you like tax information, but at least we can give you some information so that you can at least know which, you know, what questions to ask your tax person. So thank you guys for sending in your year in the chat. And if you guys have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to send them in. My name is Olga Guadarrama, and I'm one of the financial aid counselors here in the office. So we're going to go ahead and get started so we can make sure that we can finish on time. Let's see. Okay, so the first thing here is just, I don't know if you guys know anything about repayment. Basically, while you're in school, I'll cover that really quickly. Financial aid doesn't really affect you because they're not really looking at like how much money you're making. If you were in undergrad, then it would, because they're going to be looking at like how much need you have. But when you're a graduate student, basically all of the aid that you receive is not need-based, which includes the unsubsidized loan and the Grad Plus. So there's not really a difference between someone who's married to someone who's, you know, making a lot of money versus someone else who's married to someone that's not making that much. You're still pretty much going to receive the same amount of financial aid when it comes from what you get from the federal government, because all you're getting is just the unsubsidized and the Grad Plus loan. So at least I'll get that question out of the way, because I'm sure some of you guys are wondering that if you're planning on getting married soon. That doesn't really affect you. It may affect you if you're applying for like a need-based scholarship, but that would be the only time when that would be looked at. Under the different repayment plans that the government has, there's the traditional repayment plans where you basically are paying based on the amount of total debt, interest rate, and the loan repayment period. For those, it doesn't matter if you're married or not, because they're not basing it on if you're married or anything like that. They're just kind of looking at what you owe, how long you plan to pay it off, and what interest rate you got to figure out what your monthly payment's going to be. But if you choose one of the income-driven repayment plans that the government offers, which includes revised pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, and income contingent repayment, then it could matter. And it could make a difference in how much you pay depending on how you guys file taxes. The main thing to remember is that anytime you guys do married filing jointly, they are going to look at both of your guys' incomes to figure out what your monthly payment's going to be. However, if you file taxes separately, as you can see here on the little chart, the last three repayment plans, pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, and income contingent repayment, will allow you to file taxes separately, and they're not going to count your spouse's income into the calculation if you filed separately. However, if you choose the revised pay-as-you-earn plan, on that one, basically, it doesn't matter whether you file separately or whether you file jointly. They are going to consider your spouse's income in that repayment plan. So that one's the revised pay-as-you-earn. All the rest of them, you can exclude your spouse from the calculation as long as you file taxes separately. So that's kind of the main thing here. And so let's go on to the next slide. So this is kind of just, this is kind of nice because it's a little bit more visual. So it's kind of the same repayment plans that I was talking about with the income driven ones. And it kind of just talks about what the difference is between these. By the way, this presentation is being recorded and it will be available for you guys to look at it later if you guys need to through the Google site. So just in case you guys were wondering that as well. Going back to what I was saying earlier, you can see here the last line here. It says, do you consider my spouse's income and federal loan debt when calculating my payment? Revised pay as you earn says yes. And then for the rest of them, it's only if you file taxes jointly. So pretty easy and pretty straightforward with those. So when you complete the income-driven repayment application, when you're going into repayment and you're married, it is going to ask you for your marital status. So you would just mark, single or married. And then after that, it also asks you if you have any children and any other dependents. But basically what it's trying to do is it's trying to determine your family size, because your family size also factors into figuring out how much your monthly payment is. So the next thing on here is asking you, how you file taxes with your spouse. Do you file jointly? Yes or no? Are you separated from your spouse? Yes or no? Are you able to access information about your spouse's income and able to have your spouse sign the application? So it'll ask you that because sometimes, they might be separated or whatever the case is. So right here, you can see that it says right after completing those questions, it says, based on your responses to this question, your spouse will be required to co-sign your application and provide documentation of his or her income. This income documentation will be used by your loan servicer while you are being considered for or repaying your loans under the revised pay-as-you-earn plan. That one was just what was selected in this example, but then it's also going to ask you if you've filed taxes in the last 2 years, and then if your income has significantly decreased since you filed your last federal income tax return. The main thing about this slide here, I think it goes into the next one, is that even though your spouse is required to co-sign the application, they're not obligated to repay your loan by signing that borrower's income-driven repayment application. Basically, it's just a way for them to verify that the information that you have entered is correct. It's kind of like they're just kind of getting like a double check on it. But your spouse is not responsible for your federal student loan debt. Even if something was to happen to you, that debt is completely under your name. So that's the good thing. Once you're married and you indicate that you're married, basically your spouse will be getting a co-signer code so that they can go in and sign the income-driven repayment application, and it'll ask for their social so that they can go in and do that. So this is kind of what that process looks like. And it says here that the entire co-sign process can be completed in a single session, and most people complete the co-sign process in about 10 minutes. So it's pretty easy and straightforward to do. The main thing I think is just that students get concerned because they think that their spouse is going to be responsible for their student loans, and that's not the case. So basically your income-driven repayment amount of what you will have to pay once, if you're married, gets determined by a couple different factors. The first one is the income-driven repayment plan that you select and are eligible for, because they range between 10% and 20% of your discretionary income, depending on which one you select. After that, it's your adjusted gross income. After that, it's your family size. So, if you're married and you have 2 kids, then your family size is 4. Then your state of residence, because for Alaska and Hawaii, the poverty guideline changes a little bit. So that changes your payment a little bit if you're not in the connected states. And then your tax filing status, of course, because they want to know if you're filing taxes together or separately. And then finally, also your spouse's federal student loan debt is considered as well. If your spouse has private student loan debt, they won't be looking at that. So it's only if your spouse owes federal student loans, then they'll be considering that and prorating your amount based on that. And I will have an example for you guys in the next coming slides. So let me just get out of this. I just want to see if you guys have any questions so I can make sure I look at them. And okay, so this, I don't know if you guys know, but studentaid.gov has a loan simulator available through their website. If you click on the in repayment tab, when you go to studentaid.gov, it's right there. It's under that tab. It says use loan simulator. The problem with the loan simulator tool right now is that because of the 0% interest, it's actually not giving you an accurate repayment total because it's basing your payments on 0% interest, and it's thinking that that's going to happen forever, and that won't be the case. So right now, the loan simulator is not accurate unless you are not logging in with your FSA ID and manually putting in all of the information yourself, like the interest rate and everything. Then it would give you the accurate results. So that's very important to note. And I will be talking about that when I go through the exit counseling process with the graduating students. But yes, very important to note that it's not currently accurate. So when using the loan simulator, if you're married, basically what you want to do, and if this was working, the interest rate was working and everything. In this case, if you wanted to use it without, with it taking into account your current interest rate, you wouldn't log in and start. You would just go in and put in all the information manually, but you would select that you're married. You know, if you have children, you would select that too. You would enter your tax filing status, the state you live in, your adjusted gross income. It would also ask you for your spouse's adjusted gross income. And then you put in your current loan information and the interest rates, and then enter in your spouse's federal student loans if they have a federal student loan debt. And then it also asks you the question of, are you interested in public service loan forgiveness? And then you would enter your primary repayment goal, which usually is like paying off my loans as quickly as possible, or you want to have the lowest payment possible. And then that will give you your results. But like I said, in order for this to be accurate right now, because of the 0%, you would have to manually enter everything in and not use your FSA ID to log in, because it'll basically base everything on 0%, and it won't give you like any true interest details of what it will be over time. So there we have that. So most of the time when, you know, people are married, they usually file taxes together just because they get more advantageous tax brackets, and they don't have to worry about not getting certain deductions and stuff like that. But if you decide that you don't, you know, you're going to file taxes separately, you know, you might lose more advantageous tax brackets. You might lose the student loan interest deduction, possibly the child and dependent care tax credit, the earned income tax credit, and maybe the American Opportunity and Lifetime Learning tax credit. So you should just check, if you're married, how this will affect you with a tax person, to see what might be best after you figure out basically how much money you would save from filing separately versus filing jointly. So that I can help you with that if you have any questions of figuring out like what the difference would be between married and filing taxes together and filing taxes separately, as far as what your monthly payments are estimated to be. But I wouldn't be able to tell you like what exactly you're going to lose from these things. These are just kind of things that we got from a tax person, just as like a general idea. So let's see, someone sent a question. If you don't have children now, but plan on having in the future, will the payment amount adjust under the income-driven plans? Yes, actually they will, because once you update them, with the income-driven repayment plans, you will be asked to recertify your income and your family size every single year. So once they see that you're married, okay, now you're a family size of 2. So your payment changes slightly because your poverty guideline amount goes up. Once you become a family size of 3, you're married with a child, then it changes again a little bit. You can always ask your loan servicer to recalculate your payment. If you have, say, you had just recertified in November and you were still a family size of 2, and then your baby came in, January or February, you could ask them to recalculate your payment so it could go down a little bit more based on that other new family member. So that's something that you can always request from your loan servicer. So let's see. Okay, so here is kind of a case study that I put together for you guys, just so you guys can kind of understand a little bit more on how this works. So let's just say here we have Frank. Let's just say he's a resident and his adjusted gross income is 56,126. And then Ellen is his spouse and she makes 50,000 even. They don't have any children. They live here in Illinois and they are selecting either the revised pay as you earn or pay as you earn, which by the way are the most popular income driven repayment plans because both of those are 10% of their discretionary income. And let's just say that their tax filing status is married filing jointly. So together they make 106,126. That's their combined adjusted gross income. From that, they let them deduct the poverty guideline for a family size of 2. And as of 2022, that amount is 27,465, the way that the number that they use for the income driven repayment plans. So that means that their discretionary income is 78,661. And then what they do is they just multiply that discretionary income times 10%. And that gives them $7,866.10. And simply all they do is just divide that last number by 12 months to get the monthly payment. So this is the monthly payment amount for Frank if Ellen has no federal student loans, because maybe he's the only one with student loans. So the payment would be $655.50 because it's using both of their incomes. So let me get rid of that question that I already answered and see if you guys have another one. Does loan repayment use current tax filing or previous, like Fafsa? Okay, that's a good question. Usually they will just go based off the latest 2 tax returns that are available through the IRS. So I think they will use like the most current ones. Like for example, for you graduating students in class of 2022, if by the time you graduate and you're applying for income driven repayment, which probably wouldn't be until like September or October of this year, they will probably be asking you for your 2021 taxes because those are the most recent taxes that you filed. So it doesn't really work the same way as with Fafsa, because with Fafsa, it is prior year. And the reason for that is just because they were realizing that the deadlines for them, to request for you to use the most recent ones, sometimes people got extensions and whatever the case, sometimes people didn't have them right away. So they just decided to, in order to make the deadline earlier, because remember they moved it from January 1st to October 1st, they just decided to do prior year. So for purposes of income driven repayment plan, it will likely be your most recent tax returns from the previous 2 years. So it'll probably be 2021 and 2020 that they would ask you for. Okay, so then continuing on our case study, we remember that their monthly combined payment would be $655.50 if their payment was under revised pay-as-you-earn or pay-as-you-earn and they were doing married filing jointly. So let's just say in this situation that Frank owes $300,000. And in this case, we're going to say that Ellen also owes some federal student loans too. So in this case, let's just say she owes $100,000. Just so you guys can see how it works when your spouse also has federal student loans. So basically their combined debt is $400,000 altogether. So what they do to figure out how the monthly breakdown is going to be is they divide that amount. So they will take, okay, Frank owes $300,000 out of $400,000, which means that he has 75% of the debt. So they will take the original payment of $655.50 and multiply it by 75% because that's the amount of his debt. That's the amount of the combined debt that he has. So then Frank's monthly payment would be $491.62 under revised pay-as-you-earn or pay-as-you-earn because they file taxes jointly. Now for Ellen, because she only owes $100,000 out of the combined $400,000, she only has 25% of the combined debt. So then they would take the $655.50 again and then multiply it by 25%. Now her portion to pay would be $163.88. So then if you take the $491.62, which is his prorated amount based on her having debt as well, federal student loan debt, and her prorated amount, it still equals to $655.50 altogether. They're just basically each paying a portion depending on how much of the debt they each owe. So obviously, if you have someone that doesn't have any federal student loan debt, then all of the payment would be yours because they're still using that person's income to contribute to the payment, but that person doesn't have any federal student loan, so the monthly payment doesn't get reduced based on their student loan debt because they don't have any. So keep in mind that your spouse can choose a different repayment plan than yours, but your calculated payment will always be based on the income-driven plan that you select and are eligible for. So in this case, they could have both been on the same repayment plan, but that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. He could be on revised pay-as-you-earn, she could be on pay-as-you-earn. You both don't have to be on the same repayment plan in order for this to work. So hopefully this is not too confusing. I don't know if you guys have any questions so far. I don't see any coming in, but basically at this point, what Frank would do is he would see if he can't afford the monthly student loan payment of $491, which would be his portion to pay if she also had $100,000 in student loans, because it's prorated based on his 75% of him having 75% of the debt. Basically what he would do is then he can select to file taxes separately and then go into either pay-as-you-earn, income-based repayment, or income contingent repayment. And these plans are going to base his monthly payment on his adjusted gross income only, as long as he files taxes separately from his spouse. So basically what they would do is they would take his $56,126 salary. They would deduct the poverty guideline for a family size of 2, because he can still do that because he's still married. So once they deduct that $27,465, he's left with $28,661 as his discretionary income. And then that amount is multiplied by 10%. And that will give him $2,866.10. And then they just divide that number by the 12 months to get his new monthly payment amount of $238.84. So this is obviously a big difference than the $491. And this is what I was talking about here, is why you want to check with your tax person, is because you want to see how much money, you already are going to know how much money it's going to save you for monthly payments, because we can tell you that. They would just be able to tell you like, oh, if it's not really going to affect your taxes too much, then maybe you can just file separately in order for you to save the monthly amount every single month for a whole year. So, back to considering his options. If he was to do married filing separately, his payment would be that $238.84 by 12 months. So he would, in the year, pay $2,866.08. If he was to do married filing jointly, it would be, a little bit less than this, because remember, it would be prorated a little bit. But if Ellen didn't have any debt at all, he would actually pay $7,866 for the year. So the difference between these two numbers is quite a bit. So basically, if he was to do married filing jointly and she didn't have any federal student loan debt at all, he would have to pay basically $5,000 extra for the year. So that's a lot of money. And that's why you want to check to see if it's going to affect you in your taxes a lot, because maybe they'll tell you, oh, it's really only going to make you lose $800 in tax credits and stuff like that. And then of course it makes more sense to lose the $800 and save $5,000 versus the other way around. So another thing I kind of want to mention too is there are certain states in the United States that are considered community property states, and they're listed in red here. All the ones that are red, Alaska is optional, so it's not a mandatory community property state. What happens in these states is that, say you guys are married, when you file taxes separately in a community property state, what they do is they basically take both of your guys' incomes and divide it by 2. So in this example, let's just say Mark makes $200,000 and Susan makes $150,000. Basically what they would do here is they would add the $200,000 plus the $150,000 for it to equal a total of $350,000. And then they just divide that by 2. So basically both of you guys would make 175,000. Even though Mark makes more, he would claim 175, and then Susan would also claim 175 in a community property state only, which are listed right here on the right-hand side. So if you're not planning on living in any of those states, then, and you're not planning on filing taxes separately, then you don't have to worry about that. But if that might be a possibility in the future, it is good to keep that in mind. So let's see. So in this case, let me see what the question is here. Frank is paying less per year, but the total amount he owes doesn't change and the interest rate doesn't change. So basically he's paying over a longer time, but accruing all that interest and paying more in the long run. Yes, he would pay less per year if he was to file taxes separately because his payment goes down. But the total amount that he owes does not change. That is correct. And the interest rate does not change. That is correct. So he basically would pay, depending on how his income-driven repayment plan is set up. Because say pay-as-you-earn has a 20-year repayment plan, revised pay-as-you-earn has a 25-year repayment plan. So he would probably, if he owes enough to pay for that long, he would pay for either 20 or 25 years, depending on the repayment plan that he selects. So paying less, if he's going to go with a 20-year plan and still have some amount forgiven, would probably be better. It just all depends on which repayment plan he selects and how many years to forgiveness that plan gives him, because all of the income-driven repayment plans do have forgiveness built into those plans as long as you pay them for a certain amount of time. The bad part is that sometimes you may not end up paying for that long because you might end up paying off your loans before those 20 years are up. And if that's the case, then you're going to pay a lot more interest, because say you have to pay, you're not going to get forgiveness until year 20 and you're done paying it in year 18, you're going to end up paying so much interest over 18 years. So yeah, it's kind of confusing, but it all depends on the number of years that that particular plan has forgiveness. The one that you can get forgiveness on the soonest is pay as you earn, which is also the one that allows you to file your taxes separately from your spouse and only counts 10% of your discretionary income. So usually pay as you earn and revised pay as you earn are the best ones that you want to try to go with, because both of those are only 10% of your discretionary income instead of 15 and 20%. Hopefully that made sense. If not, you can ask again. So common question, is my spouse responsible for my student loan debt? So generally the question to this is no, unless you co-signed a private student loan for your spouse, or you co-signed a federal Grad Plus loan for someone that had bad credit history, or you took out a private student loan after you got married and live in a community property state. In a community property states, both spouses may be equally responsible for all debts taken after they marry. So you should speak to a student loan lawyer in your state if you have questions about this. So I think that pretty much is the presentation, which, oh, very good. We're at 12:31. So that basically is the presentation. If you guys have any more questions, you guys can stick around to ask. I don't have anywhere I need to be right now, so I can stay on and answer questions. I hope that you guys learned something. Thank you for attending. And if you don't have any questions, you can log off. And remember that this presentation was recorded, so we will upload it to the Google site so you guys can have access to it in case you need it later.